So welcome everyone to the first Sales Roads Family Feud. I have two amazing guests competing for the crown of the first winner of our sales game here today. So I am going to introduce Steve Richard as our first contestant. Steve.
David, pleasure being here. Thank you. Just quick background. I co-founded Vorsight and Exec Vision. I'm currently at MediaFly in enablement. So I've met a few account executives in my day. Rich is trembling in his shoes right now.
And competing with Steve is Richard Smith. Rich, you want to give a little background on why you might be able to win today's Family Feud?
Well, British people are led to, be smarter than those folks over the pond. But yeah, my name is Richard Smith. I'm head of growth here at My Sales Coach. We work with companies who have access to our marketplace of top class sales coaches, and so we come into contact with sales reps from all sorts of different companies, and we have a lot of data around what's most important to them. So hopefully that'll come out in the show today.
So who would like to go first? Steve, Rich? Who's brave enough to take the first swing?
I defer to Rich Smith.
Okay. Rich, you have been deferred to. So let's start with question number one. Which skill or trait should hiring managers prioritize most when recruiting new AEs?
I'll go for confidence.
Confidence. Okay, that is definitely important. Though, Rich, I have to say you didn't say that with a lot of confidence. So, there is that. But Steve, what would you say?
I'm going to go with coachability.
Coachability. All right, Rich. Even though you said it with very little confidence, I am happy to say your answer of confidence scored a total of 33 points. And Steve, coachability, though a very fine answer, I must say, only got 11 points.
We got to whip these sales managers into shape for what really matters, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, let's start there, actually, Steve. So you obviously disagree with at least those two answers. Why do you think coachability is more important than confidence?
Because there are people who are overly confident who don't have that culture of learning and improving and development. And I've seen this time and time again, and they're very appealing through the recruitment and the interview process. But when they come into the organization, a lot of times they think they have all the right answers. They think they're smarter than everybody else. And then you frequently see these people who are not as confident, but they are very open to learning, coachable, and they outperform over a period of time. I see a lot of very confident salespeople who have a, quote, track record of excellence at other companies that crash and burn.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. I think that it's also maybe where and when confidence comes into place, right? So confidence, you want to be confident to some degree, after training or, as you're going into a discovery call and whatnot. But like you said, a lot of times confidence and coaching can actually, butt heads with each other. So Rich, what are your thoughts given Steve's insights there?
I actually agree with Steve. I went for the answer that I thought a lot of sales leaders would choose, not necessarily the one I would choose. And I think, too much confidence is can be dangerous in sales. On the flip side, I say I've seen it can be helpful when it comes to salespeople feeling like they are well equipped for having the right types of interactions with prospects. And also it can be a good attribute to help them bounce back from rejection, lost deals, having that confidence to just kind of like leave the last quarter behind and then move on and go after the next quarter rather than dwelling on their why they didn't hit the number last quarter.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So confidence really can help with resiliency, which I think is an important trait, I think, in the sales profession. So that's well put. Appreciate that, Rich. All right, guys. So the top 5 answers coming in last is adaptability and coachability with 11 points. Discovery, active listening abilities was 20. Technical product aptitude, a little below that actually, 15. and persistent, tenacious attitude topped it off with 33. And just behind that, relationship building and rapport, 31. So, what do you guys think about that top answer? Persistent, tenacious attitude.
I can see that if someone is able to be professionally persistent, tenacious, it can be a good thing. Um, I am surprised that is higher than, for example, something like listening skills. I think if you're a great listener in sales, that you're probably going to have better conversations, build better relationships with prospects, which in theory should make you have to be less kind of persistent and tenacious. When I hear those words, it kind of like makes me think of you kind of chasing up your prospects, constantly chasing them for an update. When actually, if you're good at your job in sales, like you have to just do less chasing in general. Um, Prospects are usually going to be more responsive to you because they trust you, you understand their world, and so yeah, I'm kind of maybe a little bit surprised by that being top of the list, and actually can see that other things on that list, from my experience, definitely warrant itself to be much more impactful on sales success than just being persistent or tenacious.
Yeah. And so Steve, to you, I want to actually crystallize, because you did say adaptability and coachability, which came in last. And so let's just frame that against persistent, tenacious attitude. Like what, how do you see that dichotomy, and either why you feel that, sales reps rank it that way, and how you might see it differently?
Oh, I thought is it sales leaders or reps that they surveyed? It was
A's.
AEs. Ah, then that makes it completely different. Because I think the AEs are idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. Because they don't they you're and I don't mean it like that. Here's how I mean it. I mean it like, I think that they have this perception about what are the things that make you effective and successful in sales. And it's one of those classic misunderstandings relative to the things that are actually making you effective or successful. It's like these, psychology experiments I do. Is people say, "Oh, I never do that." You know that when people shake hands, you know that within 5 minutes of shaking hands, like 95% of people will do something like this, where they like touch their nose around here.
Hmm.
It's something that's innately built within humans. It goes through, our DNA for eons, and we all do it. But you're like, "Oh no, I never do that." Baloney. I mean, they can literally watch you and you do it every time. My point being is these AEs think that, oh, I've got to be confident and persistent and, not take no for an answer and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at what actually leads to sales, it's not that. It's all these other things. So I think it's a confirmation bias kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think it's something we've been trying to overcome forever. I mean, it's the way that sales people show up in pop culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every movie in sales was, about sales didn't really talk about adaptability and coaching, right?
Oh,
That doesn't necessarily make for
Boiler
great cinema.
Room, The Wolf of Wall Street. Didn't see a lot of adaptability and coaching in those. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. I think it's ingrained. It's ingrained in our society that that's what a good salesperson is. When a lot of times the actual traits that are promoted are those, and I think you said it well, Steve, are those that actually make us least successful sometimes, because it gets in the way of those things that are really important, like listening, like learning, like understanding your prospects' problems, and things like that. So I think this question and the way it was answered here by AEs kind of crystallizes some of the issues we see in our industry. Um, and we've seen them throughout time. So there you go. Nothing like Family Feud to bring a timeless core issue of sales out front and center for us. All right, Rich and Steve, we're going to move on to our second question that we asked AEs to answer for us. And the question is, how often do you find yourself considering a new sales role at a different company? And we gave them 5 different choices. Never, I'm fully satisfied. Often, multiple times a year. Rarely, occasionally crosses my mind. Sometimes about once a quarter, and very often. And so we will go to you, Steve, this time to tell us what you think was the number one answer amongst AEs.
I'm going to go right in the middle. Quarterly.
Quarterly. So sometimes.
Sometimes.
All right. And Rich.
I'll go for a little bit more regularly than that. Very often, yeah.
So we'll start with you, Rich. Why do you think very often?
I just think there's a lot of sales reps out there that always have it in their head that the grass is always greener. I just think, there's. I saw this in in COVID, as particularly when all the power was in the hands of sales reps. Companies were chucking money left, right, and center at hiring, and they always felt like, hey, I can get a bigger package and get paid more if I go to the next company, and I think that's kind of that's created a little bit of a culture across sales reps that's still kind of there, that they always feel like, hey, I can be getting, I can be more satisfied somewhere else. And that might not necessarily just be for money now. That could be, we see a lot with the people that we've surveyed in our own company, the feeling that they're not getting what they need from their company from a development perspective. And, reps putting even more emphasis on growth and development as being, in some cases more important for them than how much they get paid. But yeah, I just feel like that's why there's a lot of people out there who are constantly thinking about their next move.
All right. Yeah. And that's an unfortunate mindset. We'll talk a
Mm.
little bit about that. But Steve, why do you think about once a quarter, which still is a lot, right?
The truth is that when I go and look at the salespeople who, if you added up every one of their W-2s for every year, or if you're in the UK, whatever the equivalent tax form is the W-2. And if you put that number at the end, and if you said that is the measurement of the best salespeople, it's not. And the truth is that a lot of people who have made the most money in sales over the years, they got lucky. The right company with the right product market fit at the right time, with the right inbound demand being driven to them, or maybe a company like Sales Roads driving them a whole bunch of qualified meetings and opportunities. Like that to me is more often the measure of success of the rep hitting big compensation numbers. And as a result, I think there's a lot of salespeople out there that kind of like have a buddy that's in one of those situations, and they're always making club, and they're sitting there looking at their buddy making club and going like, I'm better than them, and they're making club and I'm not, and they probably are. They probably are, and I think that's kind of like a quarterly thing. I also think it probably went down a little bit here in 2025 relative to 2021. I bet it was like every day because everyone was getting hired left and right. But now there's a lot of people out of work, so people settling into where they are a little bit more.
So I'll give you the answers and then we're going to dive into it a little bit more. So, Steve, you were right. Sometimes with 47, I don't know if it's something to celebrate that all sales reps are doing, but well done at nailing the psyche at least.
Well, Rich got me on the last one, so I wanted to go one.
Yeah,
I'll let you have this one, Steve.
So we're 1-1. Yeah, which is good. And Rich, I guess thankfully, but maybe not for you, only 4 points
What?
very often.
I'm surprised by that, but that's.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. So, and then next was rarely, often was multiple times a year, and then there were only 9 respondents that are fully satisfied. That's less than 10%. So, I think Steve, you dived into this a little bit, but Rich, I'd like to get your perspective to building on what you said as far as very often. What obviously this is a systemic issue, and it's a real challenge for teams, as we all know, because you're, as a sales leader, constantly in hiring mode, training mode, and it's really hard to build a high performing team when you have people who are basically looking for a new job, not necessarily taking a new job, but looking for a new job every quarter, which either means they're not doing well, they're not feeling fully satisfied, and so it's just a negative vibe. And just to build on this, just to give a little context, I saw a stat on LinkedIn yesterday. I think it was from Pavilion or whatnot. I don't know the source of it, but I think the magnitude probably tracks about right. They said on average tenure for, at least this is go-to-market leaders, is 18 months, right? And so that means that basically if you have let's say a 40-year career, you're working at over 20 companies
Right.
over 40 years, right? So this is a huge issue in sales. And so would love your thoughts, to build on, some of the things that you talked about as far as some of the issues, but also how do we address this? Because I think it is really hard to build anything meaningful when you have these types of numbers, when of people who are just unsatisfied or looking for other opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess if you can come to accept that for some people it is just human nature that there are always going to be a portion of people who are never going to be fully satisfied, that will are always looking for the next thing, um, and you get comfortable with that. The key is like, okay, what about the avoidable churn in your sales team? What can you do about that, right? And that's the thing that we should be focusing on. And again, coming back to the stat that I shared earlier, we did a survey last year across 1,600 sales professionals on the state of sales coaching as just one thing, and like what do people actually want? What do they actually get? And what it showed was that less than half of all salespeople surveyed um, rarely, if ever, get any type of coaching from their manager. On the flip side, you got over 90% of the sales leaders that were surveyed claim that they're coaching their reps on a regular basis. So there's this massive like contrast in responses. And the reason why that's dangerous is because sales leaders are, even if they think that they're giving their team what they need, it's not being received in the same way by their people. And until you actually identify that and address that, you're going to be susceptible to people on your team who just feel like they're not being supported, that they're not growing, that they're not developing in your sales organization. And so that's where I think sales leaders need to understand, what is it that my salespeople actually want, what's important to them, and if that's around growth and development, what am I not doing right now that they actually need? And that's going to involve having conversations with your salespeople about saying, hey, like what is important to you? What can I give you? What have I been doing before that hasn't been valuable? What can I do more of? So yeah, so that might be a tough pill for some sales leaders to swallow, quite frankly. But until you actually address that, you're always going to be at risk of the kind of the silent quitters in your sales team who might look like they're doing well, maybe they're making good money, but actually, what's really important to them is actually missing. And yeah, you're right, as you said, David. You can't grow and scale a sales organization when you're constantly just replacing people every 6 to 9 months. You're just on a hamster wheel where you're just not making progress. So
Yeah. I think that the coaching is huge, both from a standpoint of growth and development, and people don't want to feel stagnant. They want to feel like they're growing. They also want that personal touch. Even if they're not learning something, they want a connection with their manager, and to feel supported, and to feel that they understand where they're going, and what the goals are, and things like that. And when you don't have regular coaching, you miss so many of those other aspects as well. So I do think that plays into the numbers that we're seeing significantly. And then to you, Steve, I'd love your thoughts on that. You brought up the paycheck, which could be a huge driver. I think one thing I haven't heard from you guys, and I'd love your thoughts on, because I think a lot of, at least we see it in the headspaces around culture and those types of things. What do you think is driving it? Is it the paycheck? Is it coaching? Is it culture? What's driving these numbers?
Also could be career path. Just because it depends on the individual. Look, the myth of like reps are either only motivated by money or not motivated at all by money. Both of them are wrong. We did one survey many years ago now, but it was all about millennials because they were saying, "Oh, millennials are not motivated by money." That didn't check out at all. And instead, you're going to have some people who are going to be motivated by, they don't want to be a quota carrying full sales cycle rep, but they want to get into sales operations, enablement, marketing. We even had people who transitioned to our product team that they wanted to be in those types of roles over time, from a sales role to that, surprisingly. So you don't, I mean, you're going to have to find out about each individual, what is that thing for them. But for certain people, that's going to be the biggest driver, is if they have this recognition of the company that of the role they wanted to get into and how they can get them there. And then they're happy in that role, then they're going to stick around longer.
Yeah. And that actually fits in, I think, nicely, Rich, what you're saying with coaching is sometimes you don't know what somebody's ambitions are and what their career path is unless you meet with them regularly, you talk to them, you ask them those questions, and that's a key part of the coaching process.
Right.
And helping to enable them to move into that next role, hopefully within your company, so that you keep that talent and you're not just benefiting another organization or worse, your competitors. All right, guys. So that brings us to question number 3. And I believe if I can do my math correctly, we are all tied up. 1 point to Rich, 1 point to Steve. So it all comes down to this, guys. A little nervous at all? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Steve
is nervous. Rich, you're going back to your confidence answer. You're confident.
Yeah, Rich,
all right.
Rich, he's got ice in his blood. Me, I'm nervous. He's fierce competitor over there.
All right, guys. So it comes down to this question. I want to hear from you. What do AEs find to be the most motivating factor to have them exceed quota month after month? And since, Rich, you seem so confident, we will start with you.
I'm going to say internal recognition.
Internal recognition. And survey says 14 points. It's on the board, Rich. Our lowest one on the board, but it's
really?
on the board. So, Steve,
I'm going to say
yours to lose.
I'm going to say it's because they like talking to people. No, that's a joke. because every interview I've ever done with a salesperson, like, why do you want to be in sales or why do you like sales? Because I like talking to people. Literally, that's the first thing they say, and I'm like, sure. I'm just going to go with money because it's going to be better than 14%. What do we got?
So
comp plan.
Steve Richards says money. So I think that aligns with commission and financial incentives, which was our number 1 answer. So Steve Richards, congratulations.
Rich, you went for the noble answer.
I did, yeah. It's just how it's been brought up,
You went for the honorable answer. I like that.
Well, very, very good. And it shows you what honor and honorable answers gets us these days. So I'm going to read the rest of the answers, and then I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this. So, as I said, commission financial incentives was number 1. Career progression and opportunities was number 2. Delivering real value to customers was tied with personal pride and sense of achievement. And coming in last, but on the board, team recognition and healthy competition. So, Steve, you got the right answer. Why do you think AEs said that?
I interact with a lot of AEs, and they all say the same thing. My base salary doesn't pay my mortgage, so I want to be able to pay my mortgage.
So I'm going to dive into that in a second before I go to Richard, because I think it brings up an interesting question, right? Mm-hmm. We want them to be motivated by some of these other things, right? Mm-hmm. Team recognition, help, working as a team, delivering real value to our customers, right? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the commission structure and motivating reps to have to literally sell in order to pay their mortgage? And does that detract from some of these other things?
All right. So there's 2 interesting inputs to this. One is the book Dan Pink and the research Dan Pink's done. You probably know about the candle problem and how when they pay the people to try to do it, they don't do it faster. They do it slower because that financial incentive clouds their judgment. So you've got this body of research out there that's somewhat refuted, somewhat not refuted in academia that basically says, hey, financial incentives don't ultimately drive behavior. And oh, by the way, guess who recycles the most aluminum? The state of Michigan, because they have a 10% or 10-cent deposit instead of other states that have 5 or none. So maybe it does. So there's kind of conflicting research, but it generally says that financial motivators, especially for your problem solving, are not actually creating better results for solving problems. But then at the same time, The reality is that I've seen sales organizations that pay no commission and it's all base salary. I do see that from time to time. And you'll tend to see kind of like more consistent average performance, is the way I'm going to describe it. No one really ever sets the world on fire, but it's kind of consistently average performance. Because, like, let's be honest with ourselves, if I'm not going to make any variable, why would I work nights and weekends? Probably not going to. So I don't think anybody's cracked the code on that one. Um, it's interesting.
Yeah. So Rich, on that, you said team recognition, healthy competition. How do you, it's on the board with the lowest point value, but it, first of all, why did you think AEs said it? And is that your perspective that you think that should be the most important thing?
No, I don't think it should be the most important thing. I don't think you should go into your job to kind of please other people, so to speak. But I have learned with people that I've worked with before that they've said that kind of external recognition has been very important to them, more important than perhaps I've actually I've appreciated as a sales leader, whereby they really like the idea of being recognized, praised, sort of respected in the organization. And I've definitely been stung before where I haven't given enough of that kind of praise recognition more publicly, and I've been called out on it before by reps. So, but I don't, from a personal perspective, I don't think people should come to work thinking, "Hey, I'm here to kind of please everybody." Um, you should be looking to deliver great results for yourself. If you deliver great results for yourself, you're going to deliver great results for your business. And so yeah, it was just what inspired my answer there was maybe kind of based on some of my past experiences with some people that I've managed.
And so what do you think should be the most important motivating factor?
I think it's a difficult question to answer because everybody's very different. Everybody has their own personal motivations. Um, you know, sometimes you could say, "Hey, yeah, money's the most important thing." When actually, if you actually peeled it back, money's not necessarily the most important thing. It's the thing that they can do with that money, which is the most important thing for that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could be buying a house, could be going on holiday, could be buying an engagement ring for their partner, could be paying for their kids to go through school, could be paying for their elderly parents to go into a care home, right? Like that personal motivation of wanting to do well is going to be very different. And so I just don't think it's a catch-all answer, because actually if you for some people, even money is not going to be the most important thing. It will be, hey, I just want to feel pretty fulfilled and satisfied getting out of bed every morning. I don't actually need the money. I just want to be doing something that gives me a sense of purpose and drive, and feel like I'm contributing some way. So yeah, it's a very personal question that I just don't think there's a straight answer for.
Hey, Rich, can I'll just jump on that for a second because you kind of slid down that same Dan Pink path of he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So essentially, being motivated by autonomy, being able to do that work on your own, mastery, being really good at what you do,
Yeah.
and purpose is something that drives purpose for you in your life. I mean, people look at me and they're like, "Wait a minute, you teach people how to cold call? It sounds awful. Like I wouldn't ever want to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, but like I'm pretty good at what I do. I like what I do, and people seem to get a lot of value out of it. So I'm helping people too. So it all kind of comes together, even if I didn't make a dollar more." So like in a perfect world, I think it's like autonomy, mastery, purpose. I think it's almost like Walter White in Breaking Bad, where initially what ends up happening is he got in it because he was trying to make a bunch of money for his kid before he dies of cancer. And then as the series progresses, he just likes being a drug dealer. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? He's really good at cooking meth and selling it, and he gets into that. And then the work itself is the motivator at that point and not the money. And
Yeah.
it's actually the same reason why I look at anybody who's like, worth 100 million or a billion or more. And I think, David, people like this, like I do in our respective lives that have sold, exited companies and made a boatload of cash. And guess what they're all still doing? Working, so there's something to be said for that too.
I love when a conversation ends by bringing in meth and how it relates to cold calling and sales. So, and
What we
you know,
do.
and I think we started with how important coaching is, and Walter, he was a pretty good coach. He had some good nuggets and young pups that he brought along on his meth journey. So, well, with that, guys, Steve, Rich, really appreciate you taking the time. And I had a lot of fun playing the Family Feud with you guys. If folks want to reach out to you or hear more about what you guys do, Steve, how do they find you?
LinkedIn, I put a tip of the day most days, although I didn't do one today. Steve, Richard, and the company's called MediaFly. So if you search that, you'll see me, and it'll invite you to follow. If you hit the three dots, just connect instead.
Awesome. Rich.
Same as Steve, but Richard Smith, my sales coach. You'll find me there. Happy to be connected with anybody who has found what I've said today interesting in the slightest.
Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate the conversation, for playing the game here, and congratulations, Steve, on a well fought battle here.